All right, this is Ubaid on behalf of Electronics, and in this video we'll be talking about the Consumer Price Index as well as two types of biases, such as your substitution bias and the new product bias. Okay, so when it comes to substitution bias and new products bias, we have to understand what the Consumer Price Index is made up of. Okay, what the Consumer Price Index is based on. Okay, so Consumer Price Index is basically a measurement. So you have Consumer Price Index. Okay, and this has to do with the inflation rate itself. Okay, so it's sort of like the measurement of your inflation rate within a country or economy, used for measuring or measurement of inflation rate. Okay, this is within an economy. All right, so just like we use the price levels and the index to figure out the inflation rate, the consumer price index is used in the US, for example, to figure out the inflation rate within an economy. All right. Now, when it comes to consumer price index and when it comes to the calculations relevant to the price levels and the index that we did in the past couple of videos, okay, there are two biases. Okay, what they mean by biases is that those calculations may not always be accurate. Okay, hence those calculations are sort of like a bias. Okay, there is something that we're considering that we should not be considering, or there's something that we're not considering that we should be considering. Okay, so what they mean by that, okay, let me write this down over here. So let's assume that we're talking about the substitution bias. Now, when it comes to substitution bias, okay, we are assuming, okay, based on the calculations that we did earlier on the fixed basket of goods, that all the products, okay, all the contents within that basket of goods stays the same. Okay, so the contents or the products, contents or the products, okay, within the fixed basket of goods. Basket of goods stays the same. Okay, so this one stays the same. All right, now, unfortunately, that is not always the case. Okay, because the contents in the basket of goods, these goods are made up of consumer spending. Okay, so what the consumers spend their money on. Okay, so this may change from time to time, from one year to the next, and from country to country. Okay, hence, when it comes to the substitution bias, okay, they talk about the true cost of living. Okay, so let me write this down over here. This is your true cost of living. And the true cost of living has to do with consumers who spend on items based on utility or satisfaction. Okay, so how much do they spend every year, for example, that gives them the most satisfaction? Okay, so that has to do with the true cost of living. That is the definition for true cost of living. Now, if you compare the true cost of living with the basket of goods that keep on changing, the substitution bias basically says, hey, listen, okay, because the content in the basket of goods keep changing because of supply and demand. Okay, consumers may choose different goods all the time. Okay, the consumer's income may go up as a result of which they may buy normal goods rather than inferior goods, or they may choose inferior goods rather than normal goods if their income goes down. Okay, consumers may choose substitute products if the price of a product goes up. Okay, they may choose the same product if the price of the product goes down and buy in larger quantity. So the weighted average that we calculated to figure out the inflation rate in the last couple of videos, okay, that weighted average may be different. Okay, not to mention the content of goods for which we calculated the weighted average may be different as well. As a result of which the substitution bias basically says, hey, listen, okay, when it comes to the content of goods, when it comes to the true cost of living, okay, if you assume the true cost of living based on fixed contents of good, it may overstate or understate the true cost of living. Okay, so fixed contents, okay, fixed content in the basket of goods. All right, so the substitution bias basically says, hey, listen, okay, if you consider, okay, fixed content in a basket of goods, okay, they might understate and overstate the true cost of living, but okay, if you consider, okay, the fixed content in the basket of goods, okay, it may not be accurate to represent the true cost of living. Okay, it may not be accurate to show the true cost of living. So this is not accurate in terms of showing the true cost of living. Okay, so this is not accurate. It may understate or overstate the true cost of living. Okay, and the second bias that they talk about, okay, this has to do with quality or new goods bias. Okay, and this bias has to do with inventions and innovations. Okay, so as new products come out in the market, okay, the content in the basket of goods changes. Okay, you might have a VCR back in the past, but now all of a sudden people use DVDs. Okay, you might have a horse wagon back in the past, but all of a sudden now people use a vehicle to go from point A to point B. All right, you might have glasses, prescription glasses back in the past, but nowadays a lot of people use contact lens. Okay, so on and so forth. So the quality or new goods has to do with the rise in the price of fixed baskets, okay, uh, overstating the rise in the consumer's true cost of living because of the change in the content of goods. Okay, because a new product came out. Okay, you then factor in that new product either back in the past or today. Okay. Okay, so this has to do with quality or new goods, right? So you have an improved version of the older good or a new product altogether as a result of which the content in the basket of goods has changed, okay, which may not provide an accurate figure when it comes to your price levels or inflation rate. All right, so that would be it for this video. On behalf of Electronics, this is Obey. Have yourself a great day.